I would like to also Professor Duran and Directorate of Communication for this invitation. As you know, the Syrian conflict was very complex, not internally but externally as well. And because we are living also in very complex region as well in the Middle East and North Africa. I will start by a fact that recently I have read an article in the Foreign Affairs. We are talking about 54 ongoing war or armed conflict in all over the world. So look, if you can imagine that if we are talking about simple war, that we have two ways, that we have at least half of the international order engaged or involved in armed conflict and in the wars. So it was an amazing to see here in the slogan of the conference that we are searching for a new order, because we are not living in an international order, especially after the recent war in the Middle East. We are talking about the chaos. So usually in time of peace, we usually talk about the transformation from information and media to communication and strategic communication. But we know when we are living in conflict and war, we do the opposite. We're transforming from strategic communication to media and information. And we are talking here about informational gap. When we are talking about informational gap and informational war, we are talking about misinformation and disinformation. So Syria has suffered a lot from misinformation and disinformation last 15 years, because internally the Assad regime invested in misinformation and disinformation. The ousted regime invested in sectarianism and in polarizing the Syrian society as a survival strategy for more than 15 years. So, and also the media apparatus in the ousted regime served as a propaganda to spread misinformation and disinformation. And the regime also the ousted regime has very powerful allies, and also use the misinformation and disinformation about the Syrian people and the Syrian conflict in order to make the regime preserve and stay in power. However, the Syrian community, especially the Syrian diaspora who lived outside Syria, played a very crucial role in combating misinformation and disinformation. When we were in the conflict alley, it was a battle about the narrative. Which is the right narrative? Of course, the Syrian revolution won the battle of the narrative during the last 15 years. And so when we started, when the new government have been established, we began, I will not talking about reform, but I'm talking about the restructuring the media field overall by transforming the media from state-run media, serve the dictator regime, to a public service media. So within a year, we were able to re-establish the media sector again in Syria regarding to the conventional sector. I'm talking here about the TVs, radios, websites, and also digitalization. But at the same time, we were eager in order to combat or counter misinformation and disinformation to reach kind of ethical agreement between the Syrian journalists and the Syrian actors in the new era. So we worked on what I can call it code of ethics and conduct to organize the media sector in Syria. And it was more than 15 workshops have been conducted during the last year, and more than 1,000 Syrian journalists and associations as well, and the civil society participated in writing this code of ethics. So in order to find a solution to enhance and to preserve the professionalism and objectivism and to counter misinformation and disinformation. And also externally, Syria until now is targeted by an international campaign by fake accounts, by misinformation, disinformation. I can say that we have more than 1 million accounts in 4 countries working day and night in order just to target Syria, to make Syria a failure state and a fragmented country. So the battle to countering misinformation, disinformation is not an easy. It's not just a technological war, but also we need to rise aware to find a partner internally and externally, because we are now talking about a global campaign to countering misinformation, disinformation, and that's why the World Economic Forum make the misinformation and disinformation as #1 short-term risk for 2025 and 2026. So we are not talking about just the effect and then the impact of the negative impact of misinformation, disinformation internally, but also on regional and international order as well.